Webinar series, where we unpack what you need to know to get ready for the CyberOps Associate certification exam. Today is episode 2, where we'll cover 2 knowledge domains of the CyberOps Associate exam: security monitoring and host-based analysis. Like last week, please go ahead and start sending in your questions now via chat, and keep sending them in as we go. We will answer as many questions as we can along the way, and for any unanswered questions, we'll transcribe them and post them later on with the on-demand video. My name is Joanna Gardner, and I'm a product marketing manager for Cisco's certifications and training program. 2 of our esteemed panelists from last week are back with us today: David Major, who is the manager of our product marketing team, and Anna Rubin, who manages exam development. And this week, we have a new panelist as well, Noreen Jaroge. Noreen is a cybersecurity consulting engineer at Cisco who leads the threat intel team and hosts the Cisco Security Stories podcast. She is a global keynote speaker and the winner of Cisco 2019 Cybersecurity Champion. Noreen is listed in the top 30 most admired minority professionals in cybersecurity by Secure World magazine, and she runs the LinkedIn group Mentor and Mentee Women in Cybersecurity. I'll repeat that real quick. It's a LinkedIn group called Mentor and Mentee Women in Cybersecurity, so check it out. So please join me once again in extending a warm virtual welcome to our panelists. And to kick us off, I will toss the ball over to David Major for a quick overview of the CyberOps Associate certification. So David, take it away.
Thanks so much, Joanna. Sorry for jumping in there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. And I hope everybody's staying safe out there during these kind of crazy times. If you've attended any of the past Essential Webinars series, then you most likely know that Cisco Certified CyberOps Associate is the 3rd of the 3 associate level certifications that Cisco offers. The first being CCNA, which we covered a couple of months ago, and the last one being the DevNet Associate, this obviously being the 3rd. Now, the program didn't always look the way that you see it on the screen, which is very streamlined and aligned with clear levels of certification. In fact, if we were to just go back a year ago, the CERT program looked remarkably different than what you see here. We had multiple CCNAs, and yes, we actually even had a Cisco CCNA CyberOps certification. But the point is that's all changed. Before we had a lot going on, we've really simplified the program. And the good news is for everybody on this call is this past February, we launched a brand new Cisco certification program, and with it, a redesigned Cisco Certified CyberOps Associate certification. Next slide, please. Now, Cisco Certified CyberOps Associate certification is completely updated and aligned to follow the format that we've used for both CCNA and for DevNet. It features 1 exam, the 200-201 CBROPS exam, and 1 course, Understanding Cisco Cybersecurity Operations Fundamentals, the acronym being CBROPS. Now, the Understanding Cisco Cybersecurity Operations Fundamentals course is just one of the several ways that you can use to prepare for the 200-201 exam. And we're going to talk about a few of those different ways in just a few minutes. Now, at the 20,000-foot level, Cisco CyberOps Associate Certification and Training Program focuses on 5 key knowledge domains. That's security concepts, security monitoring, host-based analysis, network intrusion analysis, and security policies and procedures. Next slide, please. Now, unlike its predecessor, CCNA CyberOps, which was kind of a standalone associate certification, we now have an entire CyberOps certification track with 100% focus on all things CyberOps. If you attended either the DevNet Day or Cisco Live virtual events over the summer, then you may know that we expanded the CyberOps cert track to include a specialist, professional, and eventually expert level certification. Now, the CyberOps specialist and professional level tracks are scheduled to roll out in November, which is really exciting news. And you can find out more information about those tracks on Cisco.com or Cisco Learning Network. In fact, I think the blueprints are on Cisco Learning Network today. Cisco Certified CyberOps Expert Track is still a ways out into the future. Next slide, please. Now, I won't go into too much of a deep dive here because we want to focus on all things CyberOps Associate today. But to give you a better idea about the CyberOps track, you'll see here that it follows the same pattern as CCNA, really just focusing on these key areas. The good news is, again, for the other two tracks, they're not going to be coming for a little while, so we'll just focus on everything for Cybersecurity Associate today. Next slide. So let's just do a really quick recap on Cisco Certified CyberOps Associate. One comprehensive exam and you're certified. The course is available in e-learning and instructor-led formats. Cisco Certified CyberOps Associate validates your skills with the fundamentals of CyberOps skills and procedures. It's a first-of-its-kind Cisco certification for Security Operations Center analyst role. And it's built for today's associate-level job roles in cybersecurity operations. Next slide, please. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what can I do to prepare for the CyberOps Associate exam? And that is a great question. The good news is October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and Cisco has you covered. So kicking off October 5th, 2020, Cisco is pleased to present CyberOps Prep. Now, CyberOps Prep is designed to help you prepare for the 200-201 CBROPS exam. And it features access to exclusive resources, webinars, and tools. It's an opportunity to engage and learn with your community, and you get to spend time and maneuver through exam topics with Cisco subject matter experts. But here's the best part of all. It is absolutely free. You get all of this for free. It's great stuff. And you can sign up for it today at www.cisco.com/go/CyberOpsPrep. And again, did I mention it's free? Okay, next slide, please. Now, in addition to the CyberOps Prep program, we have several other ways that you can prepare for your CyberOps cert, as well as stay informed about all things cybersecurity. First up is the CyberOps Associate Training Bundle. It includes the CBROPS course that I mentioned earlier in an e-learning format and the 200-201 exam voucher. So basically, you have everything you need right here to prepare to take the exam. You can purchase those together on the Cisco Learning Network store, and you get 15% off. So this is really a great way to prepare for your exam and your save at the same time. I mentioned it before, but I think it's worth repeating. CyberOps Prep. You can register and receive exclusive content and access to Cisco experts for free. Once again, the URL there is www.cisco.com/go/CyberOpsPrep. In addition, I mentioned before that Cybersecurity Awareness Month is this October. And on October 15th, we're going to have a Cisco chat. You can find out more about that on Cisco.com or at Learning at Cisco on Twitter. And finally, last but not least, for ways that you can prepare for your exam, we offer a virtual instructor-led training version of the course. And you can find all of those listed at www.cisco.com/go-VILT. And you can take the course either through Cisco or you can take it through one of our authorized Cisco learning partners. So these are all great ways that you can train and prepare for the 200-201 exam. Next slide, please. So obviously, we all know that everybody's working from home right now, so times have changed a little bit. The good news is you can take your exam from home now. Cisco offers online testing for certification exams, and you can do it from the convenience of your own home. You can also get an exam voucher, which is good for 1 year from the date. So if you feel like you want to go ahead and just sign up, you can get that voucher, and then you have a complete year to prepare from the time that you sign up for the voucher. This is a great way to save time and money, and you don't have to go into a testing center to do it. You do it from the convenience of your own home. And you can find out more information about that at www.pearsonview.com. Next slide, please. So the last piece I want to cover before I pass the webinar baton over to Anna is to tell you about the Continuing Education and Continuing Education Credits Program. Could we build the whole slide there, please? So it used to be in the program that you could only use continuing education credits at the expert level for Cisco certifications. The good news is you can use them at any level now. So you can recertify for your certifications at associate, professional, and expert level. And this is a great way to do this, especially again, given that the times have changed and it's not always as easy to go back and take an exam, or maybe you're just so busy with work or you got a lot of stuff going on in your life that you can't take the time to study for an exam. Now you need to be certified already. This is only for recertification, but you can do multiple options to get recertified. You can obviously take an exam, or you can complete continuing education credits and activities such as Cisco Live training sessions. You can author content, or you can complete online training courses, complete an instructor-led training course, or a combination of both. So this is just another great way that you can recertify your exam without necessarily needing to go into a testing center, which can, again, be a little bit tough right now. Now, I won't go ahead and rattle off that long URL at the bottom, but we'll share all of these URLs with you as we go through the event today. Before I pass it over to Anna, Joanna, are there any questions from the audience at this time?
Yeah, thanks. We have a viewer who's wondering of the training resources, if for someone who's a brand new beginner, which would be the best place to start of the training sources a couple of slides ago?
Yeah, so one thing I'm always going to give a plug to the Cisco Learning Network. And the reason being is a lot of stuff is on there for free. And you can also download the blueprints. I think that's a really great place to start. There's a lot of experts on Cisco Learning Network that can help you with information. I mean, I'm always going to plug going to a class. And as I mentioned before, there's a great bundle that you can get with the exam voucher and the CBROPS course, which is on Cisco Learning Network store. But I think it's a great alternative to go on there and just see everything that's available for you on Cisco Learning Network.
Great, thank you.
Yep. And with that, we'll pass it over to Anna Rubin. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Great. It is a great segue, David, because anyone who was here last week, we're giving you a little bit of a refresher on the things we talked about, but preparing and being ready for your CyberOps Associate exam is the key takeaway that we want you to have today, that you know what is expected of you and what you need to know and be able to do to pass the exam. The number one way to prepare for any exam that Cisco has, and really any exam for that matter, is to understand what that exam is based on. And every exam is based on a blueprint. It's a list of knowledge and skills that you need to know and be able to do to pass any exam. There are no tricks, no secrets, no special surprises when you come to take an exam. You need to download this blueprint and you need to look at it. Now let's jump in a little bit right here on the screen to the CyberOps Associate Blueprint. If you'll notice, it's a list of tasks, and that's what a blueprint is. It's a list of tasks that a person needs to be able to perform to earn this certification. And when you earn the certification, it's also the list of tasks that you can use to show what your certification represents. When an employer looks down this list, you can say, I've earned my certification, and that shows that I have the knowledge and skills to perform all of these tasks on the blueprint. So as you look at these list of tasks, you'll notice the first thing is the domain. It's the top level description of all of the tasks that fall under that domain. For this exam, there are 5 domains. Each domain has a weight. You'll see here the first one, security concepts. It's 20% of the blueprint. Underneath each domain is a list of tasks, and they're all numbered. And one thing you will notice is that each task begins with a verb. It's asking you to do something, to be able to describe something, to be able to configure or implement something, to be able to compare something or to analyze something. These verbs are very important because they tell you the level of knowledge you need for that task. So if you think about it, to describe the CIA triad, okay, to describe something, that's a basic understanding of its purpose, its functionality, its advantages, its benefits, to know about that and what it does and why it's used. That's as deep as you need to go for something that says describe. Whereas if you move to something that says compare, you're going to need to be able to look at 2 things and make a choice between them. So you're going to know their advantages, their disadvantages, when something's used, when it's not used. And then as you move on up into higher level tasks, you may actually need to apply something and do something hands-on. That's going to require a deeper level of knowledge. Jump to this next slide because I'm going to try to show you how this knowledge builds on each other. It's a pyramid. So at the bottom, and it's the reverse pyramid here, but at the bottom is where we look at this basic knowledge, this ability to describe, to understand something. It would be considered the lowest level of knowledge. But then as you move up to the next level, where you're actually taking that knowledge and you're applying it, you're doing something with it. You need to know how to use it in a new situation. So that requires a little bit of a deeper level of knowledge. And then as you move up to the next level, you're troubleshooting, you're analyzing, you're evaluating things, you're understanding how the parts fit together to identify a problem or to help understand how you need to move and shift and change things to get to a different goal. And then at the highest level is design, create. That's where you're using all of your knowledge to create something brand new. So when you look at the blueprint, and any blueprint for that matter, identify what that verb is. And then you'll know how deep you need to go into that topic to understand it and be prepared for the exam. I always say to candidates, the first thing I do before I take an exam is I look at the blueprint and I do a self-assessment. I say, oh, can I do that? Check. What about this? Check. And then I come to a task where I think, wow, I don't know that I can do that. I circle that. And I go through the full blueprint to understand this is where I am, and this that's circled is what I need to focus on to really be prepared to take the exam. If you look through that blueprint and you can do everything on there, you're ready to take the exam. And when you show up to take the exam, you should probably pass with flying colors. All right, jump to the next slide, because as you go into the blueprint and you determine what you do and don't know, where you need to study a little bit more, I want to show you where you can go to gain specific topic-related information. On our network, learning network, CLN, the link is here at the bottom. There's going to be a page for each of our certifications. What you're seeing here is the page for the CyberOps Associate. At the top, this is where you'll click to get information about the blueprint itself, what the exam topics are, to look for study material, to participate in different activities, whether it's study groups or resources that we have. This is a great page to branch from to get all kinds of information. I suggest you go there first. Next slide, please. As you click through this page, it'll branch you off to different resources. Here's where you can go from the top to get training videos. There may be videos on the full program, an overview of what's included at a high level, or you may find videos to dive deep into a specific topic such as security concepts, or things that may be focused on firewalls if you need something really more detailed. Next slide. And then diving even deeper, here's a video that talks a little bit about the full certification exam. Gives you that kind of overview, big picture. Next slide. This is where also we have our training course. David mentioned this a little bit, But this is more of a paid option. What I showed you before is all free, and you can do a whole lot of self-study on our webpage at no cost to you. But if you're interested in setting aside a block of time to really dive in and learn all of this material, then we want you to be able to do that with a course. So on here, you're going to find opportunities to purchase the e-learning, to participate in a class, have a study group of some sort that you really can take advantage of if you need to conquer a lot of the blueprint all at one time. A lot of it just depends on your style and what you have the time for and the need for to increase your knowledge to be prepared for this exam. Next slide, please. Now, I'm going to let Noreen, who's with us today, jump into these next two domains and give you a deeper dive. But before we do, I just want to reiterate that this is the perfect time to be focusing on cybersecurity, to be beefing up your skill set, upskilling, and increasing your knowledge. The need in the marketplace truly outpaces the number of qualified candidates that we have. And as we're watching research and seeing what's changing, really by next year, it's anticipated that there'll be 3.5 million job openings in the cybersecurity space. So there is no better time to jump in at the beginning and earn your certification to really distinguish yourself in the marketplace and give you something to show to employers that you do have the knowledge and skills needed to fill the jobs that are available out there. So now that you know that, jump in, dive in and study, get ready for that exam, and really pursue it and earn the certification that you deserve. All right, here's the exam itself. Next slide, please. It's a 120-minute exam. So you'll have 2 hours, there'll be about 100 questions, and they will cover these 5 domains. Last week, we touched on security concepts. If you missed that, the video will be on our on-demand library. This week, we're diving into the next 2 domains, security monitoring and host-based analysis. And then next week, we'll end the series with the last 2 domains, intrusion analysis, and then policies and procedures as they relate to security within an organization. So let me pass it over to Noreen, and she can dive a little bit deeper for us.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you for all our attendees who joined us today. As you heard from my previous presenters, preparation is key. You can win this exam without preparing. That is the key, the recipe to success. In my cybersecurity career journey, I've always prepared, and I always say it's always good to be prepared for an opportunity that you don't have than have an opportunity and you're not prepared. So we are helping you to prepare for this certification so you can be the best of the best out there in the market and help you enhance your cybersecurity knowledge and bring it to the table. As Anna showed, the statistics are showing we really need it in this market. We surely can't do it alone. We need you on board. So join us in this journey of a cybersecurity career journey, and even as we walk you through into this CyberOps Associate exam preparation. Today, we're going to deep dive on security monitoring. As you can see on the screen there are several concepts that would like you guys to understand as you go into the exam room to take this exam. But not only just take the exam and pass for the sake of passing, but understanding, right? Because you can have as many certifications, but if you cannot talk the talk when you're doing that interview, or being able on the job on demand to be able to explain the concepts to your clients, to your business, to your fellow peers, then clearly you're not bringing any value to the table. So understanding the concept and the knowledge behind this certification is very key. Let's deep dive into security monitoring, and feel free to drop in any questions and we'll address them as time permits. For the security monitoring today, we're going to cover overview here, compare attack surface and vulnerabilities. In this section, what we'll be asking the candidates to do is to identify the types of data provided, right, by technologies such as TCP dump. You need to know NetFlow. You need to understand next generation firewalls, right? Traditional stateful and non-stateless firewalls, application visibility control, web filtering, and email content. That will be for the 2.1 part. We'll also deep dive in maybe in the 2.3, where we have to describe the impact of the technologies on data visibility. Remember, data is becoming the hottest commodity. With all these ransomware attacks taking place, the attackers are after our data, and it has become to be we have to fight to protect our data. But we cannot do it without knowing how to protect it. So in 2.3, we're going to be covering access control list. You need to know about tunneling, right, encryption, the peer-to-peer, and also encapsulation and load balancing. Those are key concepts that you need to really understand and grasp when you're looking to describe the impact and technology of data visibility. Data has become also like a personal identity. For other countries like Europe, they have GDPR. In America, we're also launching into that. So you have to understand the importance of data. And when we mention data, you have to realize it's data on-prem or in transit, right? How do you protect that? And analyzing for data is when you're accessing the data, when you modify the data, when you move the data, and when you store the data, how do you protect that? And I'll also help you guys understand more about moving into 2.8 and 2.6. But for now, let's review 2.4. For the concept for the 2.4, where we're going to be describing uses of data types in security monitoring, you know, a full packet capture. Can you be able to understand from the beginning of the packet to the end of the packet, where is the attacker, you know, within the network, right? Accession data, transaction data, statistical data, metadata, and alert data. You have to know these key concepts in order to ace this part of the exam. 2.5, we're going to have to describe the network attacks such as protocol-based denial of service, distributed denial of service, and man-in-the-middle attack, which are very common, like in Wi-Fi settings. If you're in an airport, you go plug in your phone there to charge. You don't even know who have access to that port, right? So bad thing to do. Man-in-the-middle attack. They are silent. They are stealth. You never know they're in the network. So it's good to know those terminologies. In addition, for 2.6, which I'm going to speak on and showcase examples, because it's good to walk you through real-life examples for you to grasp, is describing the web application attack, such as a SQL injection and cross-site scripting and command injection. I'll give you the definition of those and show you examples, simple things that you do every day on your web browsing, and you never know that you're even participating in these type of attacks. Social engineering attacks. That's 2.7, that is very key. You could be having a casual conversation with your friends and you don't know how much information you're disclosing. So always be keen. Don't just hear, but listen to what is being said. But more so, listen to what's not being said. Because the more information you give out there, you never know whether you're giving proprietary information. So social engineering attacks are on the rise, and we all have to be cautious on that. In 2.8, we would like the audience to know how to describe endpoint-based attacks, right? On your endpoints, your laptop, what kind of attacks do we see there? In addition, buffer overflows, command and control, malware, and ransom. I've talked about ransomware. Those ones happen every day. I come to work every day not knowing what to expect, because the threats are changing. The landscape is constantly changing. The threat we were chasing yesterday is not what I'm chasing today. And clearly, even their tools, techniques, and practices that you're using are completely different. And we've seen in cases where they're using the same tools we use as pen testers to be able to identify them, they're starting to use them like Cobalt Strike and PowerShell. So we have to be aware of what not only your enemy is doing, but how to protect them. So, but in order to protect against the enemy, you have to know what tools, techniques, and procedures they're using. Remember, an enemy that you don't know, you can defend against. So it's good to know those terminologies. Then we'll deep dive maybe on 2.9, where we do describe evasion and obfuscation of techniques such as tunneling, encryption, and proxies. And 2.10 will describe the impact of certificates, including like PKI, right? Public and private crossing on the network, asymmetric and symmetric. You need to know those terminologies. What's the difference of each? Again, as we said, it requires preparation, and this is where we're helping you with this. And then finalize, we'll move on this section for security monitoring. We'll look into the identify certification components and given scenarios. For example, you can have to know like cipher suits, right? Key exchange, protocol version, and PKS. you have to know those terminologies, not only just the acronyms, but what does the acronym stand for? We are putting you to work because we don't want to give you everything on the table. We want you to learn along with us. So that's why we're just going to touch base just on an overview so that we'll give you more time to go back and review the concepts. Next slide, please. Let's review.
Noreen, may I pause for a
Yes.
viewer's question real quick? Thank
Sure.
you. So we have a viewer who's, I'm just going to read the question. This viewer says, hi, I'm already CCNP security certified. So how will CyberOps benefit me? Could you talk a little bit to how CyberOps might help someone who's on the CCNP security CCIE track?
Yes, and thanks for that question. And I applaud you for even having CCNP. When I took CCNP, it focused mostly on the network, right? Networking protocols and what have you. What we're doing with the CyberOps, we're talking about the current threat landscape, because again, that's constantly changing, right? If we don't transform with the current technology, we become obsolete. CCNP, it's good. You get to know about on the TCP level what attacks are happening there, on the OSI level what attacks are happening there. But the CyberOps will teach you the real on-demand requirement skill set to keep you up to date and also competitive on the market, because it's lucrative. The people who are needed for this industry are, we're looking for more people to join. So it's a certificate I can add on top of my CCNP just to stand out against my peers and against competitors and against other person who may be going for that job. So I would recommend taking it, even though you have your CCNP. I have my CCNP, but I'll also do my CCNA CyberOps.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question, Joanna, or we can move on?
Not right now. We'll have more questions later, but let's move on for now. Thank you.
Awesome. So for 2.1 here, we're just going to touch base just a little bit, compare attacks, the attack surface and vulnerability. Next slide, please. And for today, we want to do just a little deep dive, right? Describe the web application attack. All of us open browsers every day when you log into your work or checking your emails, what have you, right? But what are the attacks that happen behind the scenes that we are not seeing? Most common ones we're seeing on the market right now are the SQL injection attacks, the command injection, and the cross-site scripting. On the next slide, please, I'll be able to walk you through, just show you an example of what each is. But before I show you an example, let's do a brief description of each and every one of them. For the SQL injection attempt, most known as SQL or SQL, most people will mention it, right? It's whereby you will find an attacker trying to insert like a query via an input data form. And if it's successful, they can be able to modify that form without you knowing. For example, next slide, I'll walk you through. You log into a website, and in this form, it's asking you to enter your information, like enter your first name, last name, and your email and your password. Remember, you always have to hover on the browser to make sure you're doing on a HTTPS on a secure link when you're submitting your personal information. Anything that's HTTP, I would walk away from it because, again, you're wide open to attacks and you don't want that to happen. So here on this form, you can see you open the form and it asks you enter your username and your password and input your information. I type in my username and my password. But if a malicious application where you requested to do that input, right, and the attacker can go in and craft where it says for enter username, and they can insert, maybe do an admin and percentage and what have you, as you can see here. So this is behind the scenes without you knowing. Remember, I always recommend you do the HTTPS, not HTTP. If you're on HTTP, this is very common for attackers to do, and this is why we call it the SQL injection attempt, because they're injecting into this input form, and an average user like me wouldn't know unless I pay keen attention to that. So it's good to know what's happening behind the scenes. So here they log in, and they craft now the attacker, and they craft to modify that. Once the string is received, the user's information, I get my name, and the admin access and the password. I didn't want to get all that information, but of course, because I already inserted that information, here it is, the attacker has access to it. And if they have access to that, they're able to log in where you see where we have the two dashes, these two here, right? They're injecting that attempt to craft, and this is very important on every form entry. If that is missed out, the attacker is able to craft a message, remove those two, and get the attack into the network. Once they enter into the system, they are capable to access important tools, which they can be able to tweak, like delete or modify or privilege access to grant them access to a network where they're not supposed to have access to it. How do we identify such attacks? And that's where we talked earlier. You have to know the tools we use to detect such attacks. So on the previous session where we showed all the security monitoring tools, we have like a host application tools and all that stuff that can be able to identify such attacks behind the wall that this attack is happening. Next slide, please. And let's describe what a command injection is. And Joanna, I hope our users are putting in their questions there, because if they need me to explain, I can explain further, because I can talk fast and explain, go on the road here. A command injection attempt, these ones are very, very common. In fact, in the most day-to-day ransomware attacks, they're happening without us knowing, right? They are very possible, and largely due to insufficient input validation. That is key to know when you're going into the exam. It's not only that didn't you just input information, but invalid, insufficient information that's put there. And this can be captured when they are doing maybe an HTTP headers or on forms or cookies, right? And that's why we always recommend clean up your browser, clean up your cache and cookies, so that this information is not stored. And remember, when you're browsing on a website and you're putting information like your username and password, please don't save it on the browser. Some browsers give you permission to go ahead and save your password information there to make it easy for you next time you're accessing that browser. Please don't save it there. It's not secure. The attackers can easily access that. So you don't want that to happen. So here I gave a small description of a command injection. It's where the attacker extends the default functionality of the application, which execute the system commands without the necessity of injecting the code. So you're not going to know that the attacker is already in there on the network because they've already injected in it. And that's why it's very important. Every time you log into a browser, you enter that information. Don't let the browser remind you of your password, because I could have gone in there and tweaked it and fooled you to go into a site which is not happening, and then redirect you to that site, and you'll be able to get hacked or your information gets stolen. You don't want that to happen. So going into this exam, you have to know, one, the definition of the command injection, and to understand that it's very possible due to insufficient, I highlight again, insufficient input validation. Because you did not validate your username and password, the browser did it for you. There you go, get easily attacked. So enter your username, enter your password manually, and then go to the website. We have other tools whereby you can do like a password save, key vaults, but again, remember, you always have to remember the master password to access the key vault where it has all your passwords in there. Again, use multi-factor authentication when you're accessing any website. That way you add another extra layer of protection. That way, if your browser gets hacked, your authentication like dual security can be able to protect against that. Multi-factor authentication can be able to protect against these threats. Let's move to the next slide, please.
Noreen, may
Joanna,
I raise a question?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. A viewer who's wondering, with all this material you're presenting, how much Linux and Python knowledge is required for CyberOps?
For the associate, thank you for that question. That's a keen learner right there. I like Python too. For the associate, we're not going to go deep dive in, but it's good to know just the basics, because if I show you like a command here, you should be able to understand to read. But start preparing that when we move to the intermediate and expert, because we'll require a lot of Python scripting as we advance, especially when it comes to automation. We use a lot of Python scripting. So for start, I would just say just know the basic, but we're not really going to go deep dive on it.
Great, cool. Thanks.
You're welcome. And I think here's an example for the command injection, for example, right? And I say here, the following example accepts the file name as a command argument, right, which displays the file back to the user. So you enter in your information and you're expecting the program to give you back answers, right, any input for what you're giving it. And it's asking to get into your privileged system without giving them the ability to modify at all. But because this program runs on your root access, right, to call into the system where you see, anywhere you see the parentheses like that, the brackets here, like I said, it's calling into that system, and that gives them access to the root. Also executes on the root privileges. If a user specifies the standard name to call, it's good. But if you don't and you leave it open, that means you're giving the attacker permission to be able to grant access into your root. Now, what happens if you grant access to the root case? What I've seen nowadays is the threat actors are being able to log in or to access into networks, and then they remain stealth. What do I mean stealth? They remain quiet. You never even know they're there. And maybe they came into your network in January. Here we are in September. You hear there's a cyber breach, there's a cyber attack that happened. What happened? They entered into your network in January. They've been remaining stealth, and what they've been doing is moving laterally into the network. And this is where we have devices like Cisco Advanced Malware Protection, which is able to identify the attacker, and you'll be able to see the file trajectory on how they transitioned on the network within time. Now, using such products like Advanced Malware Protection for Cisco, we're able to identify the attacker in real time. We see them once and stop them all across the network. So they no longer continue to transverse on the network. We're able to identify which host immediately they were able to hack into and then stop them there. So see them once and stop them across the whole network, which becomes very handy. So in this case, if the attacker passes the string, where is this form, as you can see on the parentheses that I'm putting over here, then call into the system, which is now they're calling it over here, and it fails to execute the cat command, right? Due to lack of the argument, they can be able to log in and be able to get to the root partitioning of your system. That is very critical. So one, as an admin or a system admin or a security expert, you need to know that you have to have only the access that you need to access the network. Privileged access is one of the attackers we're seeing, mechanism we're seeing attackers using to get into the network and attack networks, corporations, small businesses, even your home end user system. So make sure that you don't grant access to unnecessary forms, right, that you're filling on the website. Make sure that you don't have website reminding you of your passwords. And also just be careful on what information you're sharing there. I mentioned social engineering on the previous tab when we were going over the concepts of what this chapter covers. One other concept I want to bring up to your attention is when it's social engineering, and this can be part of also social engineering, because remember, you're inputting information on a website, is knowing about your digital presence. When you go into the website, whatever you share there, it's public. So just make sure what you're sharing there is what you want other people to see. If it's not what you want other people to see, then you need to clean it up, right? So be careful on what you give on the website, what information you're filling in there, and who you're even granting access to be able not to become the victim of these cyber crimes. So going forward to your exam, you need to understand, one, what level of access do you give a user if such an example was presented to you, and I get to ask you, does this give access to privileged access, or is it just read-only access? You should be able to read and be able to understand just by looking at it. Once you have those commands in there, it's calling for a root privileges. That means admin access. You should be able to identify that and be able to select that as an example or the answer to your exam. So being able to understand input commands is very, very important as you go and prepare for this exam. Let's move to the next slide, please. And Joanna, if you have a question, I can take it before I move to this one.
Yeah, thanks, Noreen. We have
You're
a viewer who is wondering, so the viewer got their CCNA certification and saw that there were a lot of jobs out there, but the jobs all ask for experience. And I think this question would apply to the CyberOps Associate certification as well. When somebody earns an associate certification and is ready to get out there and get a job, but the jobs all want experience, what would you recommend?
It's a good question, and it's common that I keep hearing that over and over, especially even in my mentoring sessions. People always ask about that, and I'm a victim of even telling people you have to maximize your 3 E's, right? Get your education, get your experience, and get your exposure. But I understand entry level people. I mean, they don't have experience, and that's why I also go back to the hiring manager, even the recruiters. If you're applying for a job and it's the job states entry level and they're asking 3, 4, 5 years of experience, please reach out and ask them, clarify your job description. You're asking for entry level, right? And you're asking me for 3, 4, 5 years of experience. So clearly you're contradicting yourself. And we've seen that happening, frequently in situations currently in that standard market. However, don't shy to apply for that job. Remember, the person may be posting the job may not even be savvy on even what they're posting about, but maybe it will give you a foot through the door. And when you get into that job interview on that stage, right, bring your confidence up. But how can you build your experience in the meantime when you're doing job looking? I usually recommend my mentees give back to the community. Read about maybe a cyber attack that's taking place. Write a blog. Share with the audience, ask them for questions, ask them for input. And that way, when you walk into that job interview, you can say, Mr. or Miss Manager, I know you're asking for 3 years of experience. I don't have that, but this is what I have. I've been contributing in the security industry by writing security blogs. This is what my input people are saying, and this is how we're sharing in the network. That's showing that, one, not only don't you have the passion, remember you can teach experience, but you cannot teach passion, right? So if I'm hiring and I see a very passionate person, they don't even have experience, I would go for them than a person who has experience but not passionate. Because in this industry, you have to be really, really passionate. Otherwise, you'll be bored and you just give up. So don't give up. Keep doing what you're doing. Write blogs. That would be nice. Join network sessions where maybe they're doing presentation. Ask to be a speaker. Present on what you've been learning, right? That can be also another form of experience you can put in on your resume. Experience doesn't have to be on the job. Experience means currently, what are you doing right now to make yourself, one, knowledgeable, to be the best of the best candidate on that job, and to showcase your passion. In cybersecurity, passion is key. That's my input, Joanna.
I love it. That is a terrific answer. Okay, so I just want to recap. So you heard it here first. Noreen said education, the 3 E's, right? Education, experience, and exposure. And
Right.
what I heard in Noreen's answer is kind of use your creativity to come up with where there might be a shortfall. I love it.
Correct.
Thank you.
And you're welcome, Joanna. And also for the exposure, what I mean for that is, well, for education is what we're doing right now, right? Preparing you for this CCNA CyberOps exam, right? So, and then experience is what I just said. For the exposure is, remember, I can't do it alone. Joanna can do it alone. Anna can do it alone. David can do it alone. Cisco can do it alone. We need all hands on deck, right? So what do? I join a community of people, join a networking, join a local group of maybe if you're into cybersecurity, join a cybersecurity group. Find a mentor too, right? You can't learn this by yourself. Find a mentor. We have so many Cisco mentors. We run the Global Cyber Mentoring Program every other Saturday. Join that session. Find many Cisco engineers willing to mentor people. A mentor will be able to answer those discrete career questions that you may have as you transition into your cybersecurity journey, and to be able to make it clear for you so that you can be able to find the right domain of cyber that you really like to be. So exposure is key. Network, and use also the social media platforms. There are a lot of like LinkedIn. It's very good to network with people of the same industry and read what they are posting, what they're sharing. Tap their shoulders to even learn from them. I do that. I like networking with others, and that's what we're here to share with you guys. So education, experience, and exposure. All right. So
let's keep going.
Yes, let's move on. So for the next one will be the cross-site scripting. Cross-site scripting attacks are the type of injections whereby the malicious scripts are injected otherwise benign that you never know, or trusted sites. But you wouldn't know because it's behind the scenes. Remember, the attackers are becoming very skilled and savvy, and so we also have to be very aware to know what they're doing, right? In this type of attack, they use a web application to send like malicious codes, which they generally is maybe in a form where you're filling in a form and you never even know. And then it's different from what you put. If I put my first name is A and last name is B, I expect the results to be AB. But when they inject the code, it may come ABC. And in the next slide, I did capture a screenshot to make it easier because I think a picture speaks more than words. If we can move to the next slide, please, so that the audience can also see that, will be helpful. Over here, you know how they have those functions where they give you a website where you can go shorten your URL, right? So for example, here, I went to this site and I wanted to shrink because my URL was too many characters and I didn't want to post that, so I wanted it shortened. So I did put my URL here and I say it should end with 1234. Well, the attacker can be smarter and go in and do an optional custom of 12345. Now, guess what? The new link will be what? 1234 and 12345. You have to specify that because if the attacker goes in and modifies and changes these to be 1234 or 1236, my input will redirect to somebody else's website, and maybe that's a malicious website. This is where we see with those exploit kits attack, right? Those redirects, where you go to a shopping cart, let's say you type in www.cisco.com, you click on the link, it redirects you maybe to a shopping website, and you start shopping over there, not only knowing you're not on a correct website. So when you're doing shortening of the URLs, you have to give it also an option, so in case the attacker interjects and sends 5, it won't go. But if they put 6 or 7, it will stop them from that. You're not going to know that's going to happen behind the scenes, but that's where we security experts should know this is happening behind the scenes. And going forward into this exam, you need to know how these attacks happen. And it's very important to know that the attackers are smart people like us, and they're always trying to change techniques and tools in order to attack us. So be wary of that. Be knowledgeable on that, and be educated and educate others on that. I have also seen such attacks on a day-to-day basis. Phishing attacks, those are the common ones we're seeing right now with COVID taking place. In fact, we had a top 10 list of attackers for phishing. One of them was talking about, giving an example for the new testing sites. If you want to go get your COVID test, click here, right? It's within your network. So they use real-time situation to capture the audience. Why are they doing that? Because they understand that we're in a rush, so you'll be quick to click on that link and go to that testing site, and it's not really the one, right? And then maybe right now they say your company is going back to the office. The HR would like your input. Would you like to work from home, or would you like to go to the office? Click on this link to provide input to your HR, this information, knowing very well your HR was not going to communicate with you that way via email. But because you're hasty and you want to find out whether that's true, you click on that link and you become the victim. We are the greatest defense. People usually say people are the weakest link in security, but we are the greatest defense. If we as individuals become aware and take time before you click on that link, we are the greatest asset defense to any organization. User awareness is key. Educate your peers, educate others. You can even do a dry run, just even talk to your peers, start asking them questions, and if you go beyond, and you tell them, I caught you because what I was doing is social engineering, asking you more than you should provide. So do those practices, but in advance, be aware it is happening, and the attackers are constantly changing their tactics, so we also need to be aware on that. I think we move to the next slide. If it's not, that's not the last one. We can take questions, Joanna, or we can move to the host-based.
Let's go ahead and cover the host-based analysis as much as we can. We're coming up on the top of the hour, so maybe if we could do maybe 5 minutes, and then we'll wrap up with some questions.
Absolutely. So for the host-based here, we want to try to help you describe the functionality of the endpoint technology in regard to security monitoring, right? So you have to understand host-based intrusion detection, what devices are used, right? The IPS, the IDS, anti-malware and antiviruses. What is a host-based firewall? Right? Application level, listing and whitelisting, blacklisting. You need to know the differences of that. And then also you need to do system-based like sandboxing for Chrome, Java, Adobe. You need to be familiar with that. And when we move to version 3.3.2, you need to be able to identify the components of of operating systems such as Windows, and Linux is very big because right now we're doing a lot of scripting, and that's where automation kicks in. For 3.3, this is key. This is where we have to describe the role of attribution in an investigation. This is very big because I use it every day when we're doing threat intelligence. You have to know it when you're doing, for example, threat modeling, threat hunting, and threat attribution. And in this, you have to know the assets that you're protecting or you're trying to find information or threat intelligence from, the threat actors. You have to be familiar with the common terms of advanced persistent threats, acronym APT, right? Indicators of compromise, acronym IOCs, and then chain of custody. You need to understand those terminology. And 3.4, we want you to identify the type of all evidence based on the provided logs. Best evidence, for example, collaborative evidence, for example, or indirect evidence. You need to be able to understand, now that you have the threat intelligence information and the logs provided in front of you from your IDS, IPS, what is the best evidence to identify the attack? What is the collaborative evidence, right? What are the other community information sharing ISACs are sharing in regards to this threat? And in 3.5, we want you to help us to compare tampered and untampered disk managed, right? What is that? Was the disk tampered? Was the disk not tampered? You need to be able to identify those key differentials for disk image. On 3.6, we would like you to able understand in depth how to intercept operating systems like application or command line logs to identify an event. That is very, very key. If you don't understand that, you're not going to be able to know that. And then finally, for 3.7, I would like the audience to be able to interpret the output of a malware analysis tool, such as denotation or chamber or maybe sandbox. That's what I like to call it. This is in the form of identifying a hash, right, URLs, and also systems, events, and networking. Those are key, especially when it comes to hashes and IOCs, indicators of compromise. Those are very good to pick up on the trail of an attack that shows up on a network. And I think let's move to the next slide, please. Good. As we said, you have to know the host-based intrusion detection, the anti-malware and antivirus, the host-based firewalls, right? When I talk about IPS, that's an intrusion prevention system. When I say IDS, that's intrusion detection system. One prevents, one detects. You need to know the difference about that, right? Application level whitelisting and blocklisting. Common terms, whitelisting, blacklisting. Whitelisting, the application we want to allow on the network. Blacklisting, what we don't want to allow on the network, right? And then system-based sandboxing. We use sandboxing a lot for testing, when we're doing the threat analysis, threat modeling, threat hunting, to be able to mimic what the attacker is doing in real time to see whether that's going to happen. And then maybe isolate the devices that you don't want, on the production environment. Perform your analysis over there on the sandbox in order to get the results that you're looking for. Let's move on to the next slide, please. And again, as I said, host-based, here is a description of what it has to do. It detects, it prevents, and react. Remember, you want to detect the attacker right away, and you want to prevent, and then you want to react, meaning you want to stop it right away. Once you see it once and stop it everywhere. You don't want the same attacker keeps coming on your network. If you see the same event every other time, that means you didn't do a good detection or protection before. You have to know the definition of a host-based intrusion, and we've provided for you here. And make sure that you understand the difference between an IPS and IDS. Let's move to the next slide, please.
Noreen, we are needing to wrap up. We're coming up on the top of the hour. I want to thank you very much for everything you've presented. And I think we have time to close with just a couple of questions. Sure. The first question I'll take to Anna. I think it's a pretty quick question. And the question is, our viewers wondering if they can use the materials meant for the previous CCNA CyberOps exam in order to prepare for the CyberOps Associate exam, or do they need to use something else? And if so, what should they use to prepare?
Great question. And those that are in process or were in process preparing for their CCNA CyberOps will have no problem transitioning into this new CyberOps Associate. We essentially took the two blueprints, made one out of them, removed a few things that were losing their relevance and added in a few other things. But essentially, they're very, very similar. And whatever material you were using to study is going to be applicable here. So continue on that journey and feel very comfortable sitting for this exam.
Thank you, Anna. And Noreen, I think I'll take this last question to you. Could you share with us what do you think is the most rewarding thing about working in cybersecurity?
Thank you, Joanna. That's an excellent question. The most rewarding thing I found about working in cybersecurity is the fact that I'm able to help others be protected against cyber attacks, and just sharing with the common community, educating them. And it's lucrative, right? So I have to plug in that one to entice people to join the career. And it's a never-changing industry, so you never get bored, right? And the landscape is so big, there's room for everybody. I truly enjoy it. I always say this, Joanna, if I won the lottery, I would still be in cybersecurity. That's how much I really like it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
to the whole panel. Thank you to Anna, to David, to Noreen. Thank you to all our viewers for joining us today. And that's it for today's episode. But stay tuned for episode 3, which is coming to you next week. Have a great day.
Thank you.